Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of In the Studio with me, Darius Fentress. I'm so glad that you chose to join me. I'm so grateful for that. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please do so. Go ahead, hit that subscribe button. You see it right there. Tell someone about this podcast. Share it on your social media. Go listen to it on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and anywhere else you can hear podcasts. But I just appreciate the support that you guys give me. My guests have been amazing, and today is no different. I got a gentleman that's on the show today that is doing some amazing things, Lord, in his life and in music and in touring and everything. And we're gonna get into it all. Give it up for my friend and brother, Bruce Briggz. Yo, what's up, Bruce? How you doing, man?
What's up, man? I'm good, dude. I am so good. I'm so honored to be here. Thank you for choosing me to be a part, man. This is great. Man. This is great. Seriously, I'm really honored.
I'm thankful that you were able to come on. You're a busy guy, and we're going to talk about everything you got going on. I've known you personally now, maybe a few years, but we've crossed paths a lot, and we actually have some connections through my family.
Absolutely.
You're really good friends with my brother Richard.
That is my guy. That's literally one of my greatest friends ever in life, man. I love Rich for sure.
Yes, sir. And you can tell, I know you from the Northwest because you got that Seattle Seahawks hair going on right now.
Yeah, man. Seattle, Washington, baby.
Northwest, I grew up in Portland, Oregon, so we got that Northwest connection.
Yeah.
And so you born in Seattle?
Yes. So technically I was born in Tacoma.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but not a lot of people, Tacoma is getting, better like now as far as people knowing where it's at. But mostly, you say Seattle and people are like, oh, okay. You say Tacoma, it's like, you know what I mean? But yeah, so I was born in Tacoma, but all over Seattle, all of the places, Kent and Renton and Federal Way and all that kind of stuff. And then left there and went to North Carolina.
Yeah.
And because that's where my family is from. So my dad was in the military. Yeah. They had me in Seattle. Yep. And then they went back to North Carolina and was like, we want to get you around some other family. And, so I split time between North Carolina and Seattle. Did middle school, high school in Seattle. In North Carolina, in Fayetteville, North Carolina. Left there and then went back to Seattle for a couple of years.
Yeah.
So
that's what's up.
Yeah.
I think I met you when you went back. Am I right? Because I was there with Fred. We came there for a concert.
So
I can't remember what year that was.
Yes, and I don't remember specifically, but I think the initial meeting that we had, it was in North Carolina. Okay. I was younger, and then like you said, when we actually like really connected, we was in Seattle. I really want to say it was at like Champion Center or something like that.
That's where it was.
I think that's where it was. Yeah. Because we had been, following each other like online and stuff like that and kind of communicating, but we had never really met in person.
Yep. That was it. I remember that. Absolutely.
Yep.
Man, so growing up in the Northwest, I'm assuming that you guys grew up in the church. You started your musical journey in church. What was that like?
Absolutely. It was home. You know what I mean? Like church was the breeding ground, obviously, for a lot of us musicians, you know what I mean? And that was just home. It's all I knew, you know what I mean? I lived it. I ate it. I breathed it. I was practically born there. And, that was the thing. My parents were the right hands to, the pastor and the first lady that were there. And at the time we were going to New Covenant Christian Center in Seattle. And that was like I said, that was a breeding ground, for me. Being a drummer or being a young kid that wanted to play drums, all of the regular stories, having your sticks, wanting to get on the drums, trying to get on after church, or wanting to play the offering, or whatever you could do, that's what it was. So yeah, that was that. And I think they called it my debut of playing drums. I played for the youth choir. They had like a youth Sunday, and they did like a youth concert, and I played for the youth choir. And it was very interesting because before that, I think I was 5 when they did that. I think this time I was like 4, and I went to play the drums like after service, kind of was leading out. And my dad, after service, and a couple of like the deacons or whatever, they were coming over, and they were just like, get off the drums, and they like kind of kicked me off the. Sorry, I'm telling the story wrong. I was playing drums, and I was like crying. I ran to my dad, and I'm, you know what I mean? And I'm, cause he was on the side of the stage. I ran, I'm crying. And he told me, he'd been down, and he told me, he was like, one day they're going to call you to play. One day they're going to pay you, you know what I mean, to call you to play drums. And it was probably that next year I made my debut playing drums for the youth choir at that. And they didn't know because I could play and I had rhythm and I kept up, you know what I mean, with the band and all of that. And they were just like, what is happening? And since that day, it's been exactly what my dad said ever since.
Wow. I was at 5 years old?
5 years old, man.
Wow.
At 5 years
old. That's amazing, man.
Yeah. It was pretty dope. Like it was a pretty dope experience. And it's funny because obviously some certain points I remember that happening. Obviously I don't remember everything, but I remember flashes from, that time. And it was really, really cool to play. Cause at that time it's a big church. It's like, playing at, like I said, a big church. You in front of, 1,000 people at that time. And at 5 years old, that's huge, Very. So yeah, 5 years old, man.
So when that started, that was the beginning of the process of you developing into an amazing musician. So at what point did you start getting any like lessons or training, or did you start playing in school? Like how was your upbringing like in shaping you into a better musician?
It's very interesting because for me, it was always, a lot of people don't even know this, but for me, it was always music and baseball. Like that was what I was going back to. So at church, I was playing drums, and at at school, I was doing sports. So I wasn't like, I didn't grow up playing in the band. I didn't, I was not a band kid at all. Like I didn't do any of that. So church was that was the place that I did all of, my stuff, playing drums. And then from kind of there, just being around in the music scene, I really started to connect with just different, people. And some of my friends, man, some of my best friends to this day, we all grew up together, and we kind of like made our own, little unit, and would kind of do certain little gigs, a lot of church gigs, but a lot of church gigs just kind of around. And people will call us to play like as their unit around, the city. And that's really kind of what started that. And I mean, I met these guys, I was, 8 or 9, you know what I mean? And just doing
How old was
stuff.
the rest of the guys?
They around, I mean, they were older. They were pretty much kind of like my, you know what I'm saying, a little bit, but it was like, when we really started doing it, maybe around 12, you know what I mean, 13, 14, but those guys are like maybe, about 2 or 3 years older than me. And so that's kind of what it was. We were just church kids, you know what I mean, that literally understood music, you know, And so that was the thing. And I learned a lot from them because a lot of those guys were drummers. And then because we were all pastors' kids at that time too. So they were drummers, but then, you know, the story, okay, well, they didn't have a keyboard player. They needed a keyboard player. So one of my friends learned how to play keys and, you know, another one learned how to play guitar. And that's kind of what shaped, you know, us being able to do that going from middle school into high school.
Okay.
You know,
and so were y'all getting paid for these gigs?
not in the beginning. You know how that go. That's just, hey, come give your gifts to the Lord, you know.
Exactly.
And that's it. And we didn't have no bills, you know what I mean? So it was just kind of like, all right,
sure,
you know.
Yeah, for love of music.
There's love of music. But one thing I will say, and I know it's gonna sound kind of wild, is, man, we learned like musicianship and showmanship from y'all. And when I say y'all, I'm talking about like watching, you know, Fred Hammond DVDs and, you know, Ty Tribbett DVDs, like back in the day when DVDs was the thing. It was like the live concert experience. You go to Target, you go to Walmart, you go to Rose's, you go wherever you could to buy a DVD and watch it. And we would sit and, you know, watch that stuff, man. And that was a big deal, you know what I mean, for us. So obviously I'm kind of skipping around, man. But you know, being able to come and connect with you years later, knowing what you laid, you know what I mean, the foundation for when we were younger, it's an honor. And then to call you friend and to call you big brother now, it's like, you know, it's a whole thing. So I would say thank you,
man.
you were a part of my upbringing. You know what I'm saying, in this thing.
Man, hey man, I'm grateful for that, man. It doesn't compute a lot in my mind when people like make comments like you just made, like the impact that was made on a whole generation of musicians, you know. But man, I'm just thankful that God did what he did.
Absolutely.
He used us to be able to influence y'all, and you're in a seat now, like you're influencing people or a younger generation now in your own right. And man,
that is crazy, you know, enough. And I have to say this, because my favorite drummer ever in the world, the guy who really made me want to play professionally, was Marvin McQuitty.
Absolutely.
That guy, he made me understand showmanship. He made me understand professionalism. He made me understand all of that. Like, and I was just like, oh my God, like I want to be him. I want to do what he does. So like I said, to have him and then to have you beside him, you know, running together and you guys literally locking in, that combination was really, really big, you know, really, really big for me.
Oh man, look, Marvin, he is for me one of the biggest inspirations.
Yeah.
And I know he's touched so many lives. Rest in peace, Marvin.
Rest in peace, man.
We love Marv.
I miss him so
different.
much.
I mean, he was different. There's really I've not come across a drummer quite like him. The only person that's kind of close to him in stylistically, I'm saying, is Larnell Lewis.
Yes.
Larnell reminds me a lot of Marvin.
Yes.
And it's intangible. I don't know how to explain it, but he does remind me of Marvin
a lot. And even though I can't do anything close to what Larnell is capable of, that you are absolutely right. Just the precision and his timing and how clean he was, and just the way that you know, the way that they play, the way that they connect with the music, because it's not just like playing, it's just little stuff that was just like, oh, that's so tasteful. You're correct you are absolutely right about that.
Yeah, man. Yeah, Larnell. Shout out to Larnell Lewis.
Bro.
Absolutely. All right, Bruce. So as you're growing and progressing as a young drummer, what was the first opportunity for you to actually be paid as a drummer, as a musician? What was your first
Oh,
gig?
I'm trying to figure out what my first paid gig was. I don't, it's funny, I don't really remember my first specific paid gig. I wish I did.
Mm-hmm.
And after this conversation, I promise you, I'm gonna call you and be like, it was this.
Right.
But I do know that around the age of 15 was when I kind of started doing club gigs with a couple of people that were around like the Fayetteville area,
Mhm.
and working with just kind of different artists, in that way. So I think that was just the beginning of it. Like I said,
Okay.
playing in clubs. And the thing was, it was so crazy because I was 15. To get in a
Yeah.
club, you 18 or
Yeah.
21 or whatever, but they liked me so much that they would be like, okay, you here or the green room or whatever they deemed the
Yeah.
green room to be. Like I
Right.
couldn't go
Right.
near the bar. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And if I did get anything to drink, because even at that point, it was like, we don't even want to see you with a drink in your hand at all. But if I
Oh yeah,
did,
because they get in trouble.
they get in trouble. So I would have to be in like I said, the green room, and they would bring me like
Mhm.
a Sprite or a water or what I'm saying, something like that
Yeah.
back there. That was excluded from, what I
Yeah.
mean, or isolated from, everybody else where it can be seen, because that wasn't a thing, but that's how it was. I was literally 15 going into gigs at bars and all of that to do these
Yeah.
gigs, and I would be the only person that would be in there, obviously, that was underage.
Right. Yeah. Man, look, I know exactly how that feels because I had the same experiences, 15, 16 years old, playing in bars and clubs and stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, same thing. You stay back there until it's time
Yep,
for us to
till it's time
play.
for us to play.
Don't, yeah. So,
Now we gonna be
yeah,
here.
man,
We gonna be here from 8 till 1:30 in the morning. But hey,
exactly. Exactly. Yep. Hey, but those are the types of things that uh, I think a lot of accomplished musicians have to go through, especially when you're talented at such a young age. And so you're going through that time. What you said, did you move back to Seattle at what point?
so I moved back to Seattle when I was 18, 19. So
Okay.
yeah, about 2007, 8, something like that.
Okay. And so what was going on for you professionally once you moved back to Seattle?
I wasn't doing a whole lot, because I was really just kind of in, the throes, obviously, just getting out of school and all of that, just kind of trying to find, my bearings. And I have to give a big shout out to Anson Dawkins.
Oh
When
yeah,
I
man.
when
My
I
God.
yeah when I moved back, at the time, like I said, when I was at the church that we were at before in Seattle, he was the worship leader there. And
Yeah.
then we just kind of kept in touch as we just kind of do, with my parents and all of that. And when I moved back, I reached out to him, and I was like, hey man, I just, I'm back in Washington, you know, let me know if you ever need anything. And it wasn't even long. I probably had been there, I want to say maybe 2 weeks, maybe a week. And Anson called me and said, hey, I'm over at this other church. Would you, you know what I mean? Would we need a drummer? Would you come and play? And I was like, yeah, you know what I mean? Cool. It's like I said, it's like you asking me to, play somewhere. It's like, that's big bro. So yeah, let me do that. And he
Yeah.
hadn't heard me play in a while, you know what I mean? And so that was the connection. And I started doing stuff with him. And then along with that, the same church, he reconnected me with Michelle Lang, who was a big independent artist in the Pacific Northwest as well. And so I started gigging with her off of Anson's recommendation and referral.
Nice.
And that's when things really kind of started opening up. You know what I mean? Because obviously Michelle was like an artist and she was gigging, a lot. And so that's where it really started opening up. But I had always networked. I always followed up. I always kept in touch, with people. And that was a big part of me just being connected. People knew that I played drums, but then some people didn't know what I did. They just knew, okay, Bruce is just the guy who's just always around. You know what I mean? I was always around. I was always, getting to, Nashville at the time for Stellars and, all of these different BET, awards, Music Matters. I was just going because I just knew that I needed to be around. I needed to be in the places. I needed to, go to LA or be, in these different, and I have really, really supportive parents, man, that were like, hey, okay, this is what you want to do. And like I said, I'm telling you the timeline, I'm like 16, 17, 18, 19, traveling to these different cities with other people that I know that my parents don't really know, you know what I mean? Like but they know that I need to be able to be around. So, that's kind of what started happening. Like I said, playing with Anson, reconnecting with, with Michelle. She knew me when I was younger, but I grew up and, started playing with her. And then from there, it was gigs around the city, stuff like that. And then I connected with a rock band. And that was literally, I was just looking for stuff. Craigslist was popping back then, and they had their tag, their job list, and I was just going, and any type of auditions or anything like that, I was literally, submitting to, and that's
okay. Where do you think you got that from? That go getter like mentality, like what? Where did you see that, and how was that developed in you?
My mom for sure, but my parents, my parents, I grew up in like network marketing, right? Like my parents did all the stuff. They did Amway.
That makes a lot of sense.
You know what I'm saying? So like we literally all of that Amway, YTB, but we were an Amway family, and my parents were, you know what I'm saying, really big on that when it was really dope. That's when Amway was really dope.
Right.
But that was the thing. And I never really met a stranger, you know what I mean, like that. But just always seeing my parents networking and understanding that you needed relationships. Like relationships are how you get to the next level. Nobody does it on their own. They might act like that, but nobody does it on their own. You know what I mean? And so, and a big thing for me too, because I'm such a movie buff, I always wanted to know behind the scenes. I always, when I watch movies, I would get movies, the DVDs that had the behind the scenes. Because I wanted to know, like, okay, well, who does this, or who directed this, or who's the casting director for this, and because creatively, that's just what it was. And with me also being an actor doing theater.
Right. I wanted to get into that.
That was a big thing for me as well, was, when at 12 years old, when I got into that, my goddad got me into acting, it was just kind of like, okay, it's connection. It's always that, okay, who did this? And okay, why does Tim Burton always use Johnny Depp? Why does, Tim Burton always use these same people, or Adam Sandler use these same people? And I noticed that. and like I said, my parents, that's what they did. And so I was just like, okay, and even though they weren't doing it in the musical space or the entertainment space, and they did it in that
Yeah.
business space, that's where I said, okay, I don't know. I don't necessarily know if it clicked as it being networking at that time. Obviously, it was as I got older that it was like, oh, this is a formula. But before then, it was just, they do this. Why don't I ask? I was never afraid to ask.
And man, as a creative, that's a great quality to have, because if you don't walk into the room yourself, nobody's going to ask you into places, especially if they don't know.
No, for sure.
And yeah, and I know you've kind of had to I say it like this, kind of reintroduce yourself into different markets, different cities a couple times. So you, at one point you moved to LA, right?
I was in LA. Yep.
How long were you there? And what kind of opportunities were you going after while you were there?
I was in LA for 7 years, which in LA time is like 10 or 15 years.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
That's a long people,
that's a long time. But I left Seattle and I went down to Florida for a little bit, and basically at that point, I was, like I said, I had connected with the rock band. I was playing with them. Ended up MDing, you know what I mean, that band. And then I moved to Florida for a little bit. Things just kind of got, kind of crazy. And I was working at the parks there, which was great. You know what I mean? And I say this because at one point I was not doing music. Like before I got to LA, I wasn't doing any music. I was just working I worked at Disney World, I worked at Universal, and I worked at Busch Gardens all at the same time, 7 days a week for almost a year. And I wasn't doing music for real. It was just there. And at one point, and money and, and it's great and I'm having a good time, but I want to do what I love to do. You know what I mean? And I told the Lord, I said, I want to make money doing what I love to do in entertainment.
Yeah.
And I clearly heard him say, are you sure? And it wasn't like are you sure in like a, this is going to be a bad road. He was just like, are you sure? Are you ready to commit to that? And I was like, yes. I said, all right, cool. 3 weeks later, I got fired from Universal. I think 2 weeks after that, I got let go from Busch Gardens because I was seasonal. And then Disney, because I was doing acting classes, and the acting classes happened in the middle of the week, but that was my schedule, was Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Because I was still new at that time, they had the process.
Yeah, you can't come
I could
back.
not switch my schedule. So they were like, the best thing for you to do and not get blacklisted is you have to quit. If we fire you, you won't be able to work. You know what I mean? You can't come back for at least 6 months. And I was like, so I had to quit, bro. And I was like, okay. And that was the thing. I went out with the rock band, which was, like I said, was cool. I went out with them for like a weekend. I came back. I got a call. I was asleep. My god sister called me and said, hey, Kelly Price is looking for a band and you need to audition. And so I was on the phone. I was like, girl, like Kelly Price. And at this point, obviously I know that she's in LA, but I was like, she's in LA. They looking for LA musicians. Like I'm not in LA. I know how this go. And she was like, well, you need to do it. And I was like, okay. And I turned around. We hung up. I was going back to sleep and the Holy Spirit said, what are you doing? And I was like, okay. So I submitted, and that's they hit me back like 2 days later and said, "Hey, Kelly wants you, you know what I mean, to come." And I was like, "Okay,
Mm-hmm.
all right, cool." So I was getting everything together. I believe that was on like a Thursday. My audition was gonna be that Sunday. And I said, "All right, you know, cool, this is what it's gonna be." That Saturday, her assistant called me, who I'm still really good friends with today. Her assistant called me and said, "Hey, we're gonna have to switch your
Right.
audition schedule because some things, you know, kind of came up, whatever the case may be." And I was just like, "Okay, all right." Well, I had did all of these things. You know, we had kind of started putting up the money for it, and I had got the money, and I hadn't purchased my ticket yet. And that night, I was like,
Right.
earlier that day, I was like, if I don't purchase this ticket, if I don't go to LA, I'm not gonna go. I'm not gonna be able to. My parents are not going, you know, because then I don't have a reason to go. And the thing that saved me was that same Sunday, Eric Dawkins was getting married. And like I said, that's another big brother. And he was getting married, and I was like, I can't miss this. I cannot miss this. And I paid for the ticket, unbeknownst to my parents, because they didn't know that I wasn't doing the auditions and just going out. And so I literally did that. And that was cool. And a tag to that, as I'm trying to paint the picture. I'm sorry, D. I know it's long, but I'm just trying to paint the picture. Is
it's all about you, boss.
In 07, I did my first audition ever.
Okay.
Onitsha church girl had auditions, and that was my first time flying out to LA to do an audition. And that was a great time. And I'm connecting this because I auditioned for Onitsha, and at the time, Shep Crawford was her producer and her music director. And so I met, you know, her. Obviously, I had been connected with her on MySpace, and that's kind of where all of us was really kind of, you know, connecting at one point through MySpace. And MySpace. This, you know, she was doing that, and I went out there, and it was great. And it came down to me and another guy that I'm still friends with to this day, and they went with him because at the time I wasn't 18 yet.
Oh, okay.
And I wasn't in LA.
Right.
And that's when things started clicking to be like, no, I gotta be there. I gotta be in it to win it, basically. And so being there, I was like, no, I gotta get to LA. So once I actually did, that's kind of really what took off. I was playing with Kelly Price. I started working with Leon Thomas. And it just started opening up, just connecting, networking, you know, and I learned more about studio, obviously being under, you know, Eric Dawkins and, you know, like Big Shiz and Gerald Haddon and like all of these people that were basically there, you know what I mean, at the time, going over to City of Refuge and, you know, hanging out with Chris and Marcus and, you know, the City of Refuge band and, you know, all of the West Angeles cast. Like it was everything that you needed as a creative. It was like, man, this is it. I don't want to go anywhere. You know what I mean? And at that point it was I was open and I was really versatile too. You know what I mean? So there was a lot of pop. There was a lot of auditions, like, and, you know, those types of things. And what I learned, even when it came to the audition process, was most of these auditions are for show.
Oh, absolutely.
Most of the auditions are for show. However, there are some that, you know what I mean, are really, really legit. But the thing, after I went to maybe about 2 or 3, I started understanding the audition is not for The audition is not for me to get the audition. The audition is for me to go and connect with the people who are at the auditions.
Yes.
Right. So most of these musicians, sometimes they're flying from everywhere, you know what I mean, to come and be. And at certain points, it was like, let me meet this person. Let me go. Okay, let me just go. And that's kind of what we were doing anyway. Sometimes we would have gigs or we wouldn't have a gig, or we hear about an audition and all the homies just pull up. We just pull up to the audition just because, like, that's the hangout for that day, you know? And that's what LA taught me too, is the work isn't the gig. The work is
it's the network.
Hanging out. It's the network. It's going to the bars and the kickbacks and the sessions, or, you know what I'm saying, the late night Roscoe's at, 3 a.m, like, getting out. It's that. It's literally, oh, you know what? Darius is doing a birthday party from a barbecue, you know what I mean, for Memorial Day. I'm going to go over there. I'm just going to hang with my brother and see what's up. Because at that point, now it's, hey man, this artist, and it's that connection. Man, I was just hanging with Bruce last night. Man, let me call him. You have to be in the faces of these people. The worst thing about working in LA was going on tour. Because when you go on tour, you're gone.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to come back to the city and, hey guys, I'm back. I'm in town. Let me know what's up. And a lot of people would see that as being thirsty, or they would see that as, you ain't. And I'm like, no, that is the work. That's the work. We had a schedule from Sunday to Thursday. You had to be out.
You were able to go out there and really begin to make a name for yourself. And I want to move up the timeline a little bit to talk about you. In your current gig right now, you're at a Vegas residency, a Cirque du Soleil show called Mad Apple. Tell us how did all that come about?
Network, man. I got a call from one of my really good friends, Andre Washington. He was helping with kind of casting with the show, and I hadn't. And I say good friends, but we would talk. Obviously, he's busy. You know what I mean? Busier than me, but he's busy and he's doing all this stuff. So we would, connect obviously through, DMs and texts and just kind of check on each other every now and then. But I hadn't heard from him. Obviously the pandemic was the blip, so we basically lost 5 years. You know what I'm saying, with COVID. But through that time, I hadn't really talked to him through the whole COVID process. And he just randomly called me one day and said, hey, man, I'm working on this show. He didn't tell me what it was, but he was like, I'm working on this show, and I think that you would be great, for this show. And I was like, I said, okay, well, what is it? He said, no, the only thing is you have to move to Vegas. And I was like, moved to Vegas. I just got married in 2019. You already know my wife, so you already know that was moved to Vegas from Dallas. Like, for what? So he called me. I'm like, man, I don't know if I can move to Vegas. I was like, well, what is this show? And at first he was like, it's a Cirque du Soleil type show. And I was like, oh, okay. But then I'm like, okay, well, what is this? Because like I said, I don't know. Then he actually came out, under the radar, and was like, it is actually a Cirque du Soleil show. It's gonna be this. It's a new show that they're doing. It's a new residency show that they're doing. And I was just like, yo, that's crazy, because prior to that, like I said, I worked at Disney in Florida. Well, Disney had a show there called La Nuba. And I had went to that show and saw that, and I was like, yo, this would be crazy to like do a show like this. And I from that day, I wanted to be able to work with Cirque du Soleil. So when he called me, I was just like, man, I don't know. And I talked to my wife and she was just like, do you want to do it? And I was like, I actually do. And she was like, okay, like, well, let's make it happen. And that's pretty much what happened. I talked to, to the director. I sent they wanted me to send a like audition, and I did. And I wasn't going to do that. Like, cause it was just a lot. You know what I mean? They wanted it and they wanted it quick. It wasn't like, okay, you got time to prepare. It was like, he called me that day. I said, okay, give me a little bit. 2 days later, I let him know that this was happening. He said, okay, cool. Literally that same day, they were like, can you send us an audition video? I had a gig that night. I had to go do the gig. I had to drop my stuff back off at the studio. And when I did that, it was like 2:30 in the morning. Wow. And I was like, you know what? All right, let's just do it. So I already was at the studios. So I set it up and I did it, and it was great, man. I sent it in, and they were like, yes, like we want you to do this, and it's been a ride. Like it is, and it's different. One, because it's corporate entertainment, so it's different.
Yeah. Okay.
It's not like your regular gig, like a, Janet or a Fred or a, whoever. It's not the touring gig. And from that, I had to learn how to be able to sit in that, because like you said, we're used to going, either getting on a flight or, on the bus or, in a different city every night. And sometimes that's good, what I'm saying, for us, because we're on the go.
Yeah, it keeps you fresh. Yeah.
Exactly. But to sit down and do that same show every night that was mentally a thing for me, because I was just like, oh, okay, so we're doing this, and I get to go home, but I'm coming back, and it's you know what I mean? It was that repetition, and I had to reach out to a couple of guys, that are our mentors, obviously, that are doing that, you know what I mean, on the regular. Yeah. You know what I mean? And that was literally a big thing. I called Nate Morton. If you know him, he's the drummer for The Voice. And I was like, bro, Nate he's a really good guy. He's been mentoring me for a long time. And I called him and I said, bro, what do I do? And I know this sounds really like childish. Like, what do you mean? I was like, no, mentally. Like, how have you been doing this gig? How have you been doing The Voice for 20 years?
Right.
You know what I mean? And you sit in that seat, and it's just that. You're not going on the road. You're not, seeing like a bunch of your friends like we usually do when you meet up in a different city or, whatever. Yeah. How do you sit in that seat and not get bored or not get stagnant, like you're stale,
complacent,
complacent. Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. Like, how do you not do that? And he shared a lot of information with me, and that was how I was able to get there and sit and say, you know what? No, I got to be able to utilize this every day to literally renew, myself. And bring something different to the table. Even though I'm doing the same show, I have to bring something different to the table, with it. And that's what happened, and because the show, I'm a musician and I'm playing drums, but also, we're a part of the show. So it's not me just playing, drums, I'm getting off of the drums, and, I'm in the crowd, and I'm, dealing with people and all of that kind of stuff. Like it's a whole thing. It's not just playing drums. It's a full performance, from me as well.
But you train for that. I mean, you have a history in theater, right?
Yeah.
Live performance.
Yeah. That's what did it. That's what did it for me, is I was like, oh, okay, I can do that. I can express, and I can, interact and all of that. And that's like, from that is how they at one point they got into like a pinch, and that's how I ended up hosting, you know what I mean, the show as well.
Okay.
A couple of times, and that's never been done in the history of the company for like a musician, you know what I mean, to come in and do, you know, that type of prominent part. So
Wow. That's amazing.
it all works together, man.
Yeah. Man, how has it for you now as still a newlywed and a new father? And you know, you could get into the logistics as much as you want to, but how is it for you in this season of juggling the show and being a family man? How is that for you?
You know what's wild is I have a great wife, man. Like my Dee is, she just is, man. She supports me so much. And we're totally opposite. I'm a 100% creative. She is not. She is a on the job creative. You know what I mean? So she's very type A, and she's very corporate, and she's very, you know, that. So when I get into my creative bag, and you know, and I want to be able to, she is the balance to say, you know what I'm saying, babe, okay, that's great. And yes, you can do this, and you know, that's fine. However, you know, let's take this in stride and let's do this. And our relationship started long distance anyway. So, you know, we built communication very strongly. And I mean, since the day I met her, I have literally talked to her every day. So it's been that that has really kind of kept us just as a married couple that, you know, lives, you know, in two different cities, you know, and going back and forth, you know, here between Dallas and Vegas all the time. And she's working as well. Communication is just the biggest, you know, the biggest part. Obviously, you know, the job, doing Mad Apple, being, you know, stable, understanding, okay, I'm going and doing this for 6 hours, and then I'm able to come back home, you know, it's great, because the stability is there, and you know, and it gives us the time to be able to do. But like I said, it still is a corporate job. So when I would be able to be flexible and just fly out and just do whatever I want to do, I can't, because I have to be here, you know, 5 days a week, and I got to be on. You know what I mean? So we're doing 10 shows. You know, we're doing 2 shows a night. So that's the biggest thing. And then, like you said, kind of navigating that while she was pregnant was like, okay, but like I said, my wife is type A and she's a workaholic. So she's working while she's pregnant and traveling, and then having the baby. Now it's like, okay, now I have to be able to juggle and understand, okay, now we have this newborn, you know, at the time, I mean, she'll be 9 months next week, but at the time it's a newborn. So when I get off, you know, basically at 11:30 or midnight, and I get home, she's been with the baby all day. So now it's my time, you know, and I got to be up with the baby, you know what I mean? And sometimes, you know, and our baby, Raya, is our baby. She is a creative baby. She is a night owl. She is like, as long as you up, I'm going to be up. So she might not go to bed until, you know what I'm saying, 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, you know? And so that has just been the teamwork. That has been, you know, I mean, the work of being able to say, okay, yes, I'm going to go and provide, but I also want to make sure that I am on. I also want to make sure that I can be, you know, I mean, the best dad that I can be, you know, and this is the baby girl. You know, obviously we have the 2 older, you know what I'm saying, girls as well, but that's the whole thing is we communicate. We try to make sure that, each other gets sleep as much as you can, what I'm saying? You try to. And like I said, my wife helped me a lot when it comes to the balance, when it comes to, the creativity, when it comes to the gig, and the show, and being able to leave the show where the show is and being able to turn on and being the family man when I am, when I'm home. And that has really been the biggest thing, which is that balance. There's not really a balance, as Darius, but you find your rhythm. You know what I mean? You find the rhythm in it. And sometimes it's gonna be great, and sometimes you're gonna be like, wait, what? But it's been a ride, man. It's been a good time, but still finding those times and being able to say, hey, I'm whether I'm taking an LOA or a personal day or whatever the case may be, I need to take time. I need to spend time with my family. Like, I know I'm getting paid, and I'm getting paid very well, and this is a thing, but at the same time, I got to be able to spend time with my family, and having those non-negotiables as well for me, too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
man. Yeah. Look, I know that having a great wife in this industry is so key, man. I couldn't be me if it wasn't for my wife. And
absolutely.
So man, I really love seeing the dynamic between you and Dee Dee. You all are just an amazing couple and a great example for how to do it the right way for us creatives, man. And
thank you, man.
And before we get out of here, man, I want you to talk about your most recent project that you worked on, When He Looked at Me. Did I get that right? When He Looked at Me?
Yeah. Yeah.
So this project, my wife and I, we got invited to this premiere. We didn't really know what to expect. And so when we got there, we were treated to a listen of your new audio. It's like an audio drama, really.
Yeah.
Of a telling of a biblical story. And just talk to us about the project, man, and how it's doing and how it all came about and everything. Man, talk to us.
Okay. Well, the project is called When He Looked at Me. It is it's from the point of view, it is a Easter production, from the point of view of one of the soldiers that had basically that had a hand in crucifying Jesus.
Okay.
And that came about because my godfather that I said really kind of got me into acting, Ranger McLaurin, he was doing plays. And When He Looked at Me was one of the plays that he did back in the day that he cast me in and I was a part of. And when I moved to LA, obviously that's, entertainment, world capital, whatever. I wanted to do like a web series type, thing or whatever. And I reached out to him about another script that he had. And I reached out to him about one, and he sent me 9. And he said, go and, do what you do, man. You're the 2.0. I taught you well, go and do your thing. And When He Looked at Me was a part of that. And it connected with me, because like I said, I was a part of it and I knew, the story, and I knew that it was a musical, and I wanted to be able to take out the music that we utilized that were covers or, things that we did when it was, in the church, basically. And bring a spin to it and produce our own original, music and, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And I was like, man, I got friends, that we can, it was really my selfish act to work with my friends. That's
Hey,
basically
yeah.
with my talented friends. That's basically what it was. And
Yeah.
I had helped one of my other friends with an idea with his Easter production that he was doing. And it really put me in the mindset. And I was like, oh snap, like, let me see, what I could do with this. And it was really great, man. I connected with some incredible writers, some singers, some songwriters, and just utilize my network to do this, what we call audio feature, which it literally is it's a movie with no visual, and I wanted to be able
Yes.
to give that. I always give credit, and I will forever give credit. I grew up on Focus on the Family. So I grew up
Yeah.
listening to Adventures in Odyssey. And if you don't know what that is, just look it up. You'll have a
Oh
great
yeah.
time. It's amazing. And this is before they were cartoons. This is before, it was a show.
Yeah.
It was literally just books on tape.
Yep.
And that's what I learned from. And so I was like, man, I wanted to do this in a new space, in a new medium. Obviously audiobooks, are still getting, big, and just all of the stuff. Podcasts are, really growing. And back then I was like, okay, I think we can do this, and I called them the Zapp and Rogers. And I was like, but I want to T-paint it. Like, I want to, what I'm saying, elevate it and make it. And for
Right.
our community too, and for our culture, because there's not a lot of Black people that get into the audiobook space. We
That's
will
true.
be in the podcasting space and, all of that. But I was getting tired of not necessarily seeing us in that space.
Yeah.
And there's so many writers, obviously, like I said, being in LA, there's so many writers and producers and all of that I was working with, that I would be like, man, okay, but you're an amazing writer, but you're waiting on Sony, or you're waiting on the big five to
Right.
approve your script or to do this and that. And I was like, but we can bring your script to life. It's a different medium, but we can bring your script to life to where it's still out there. And
Yeah.
people would kind of be looking at me crazy a little bit and be like, so is it a podcast? Is it? And I'm like, it's not a podcast, but if that's the way that you have to put it into your mind to get it, that's kind of what it was. So I said, you know what? I have to start. If I'm going to tell people, about this, I want to be able to start, and I want to open up that lane. And like I said, I connected with some really, really dope singer songwriters, and producers, and and it was new for them, as well. I got
Yeah.
a dope voice cast, and a lot of them had never done voiceover before, but they wanted to get into it. They've always wanted to get into it. And I was like, hey, I'm working on this project. Would you be down? And they said yes. And I'm so grateful, what I'm saying, for their yes. And it's doing well. And the reason why I say well is because we got it. We did it.
Yeah.
We got
You
it
did
out
it.
there.
Yeah.
We put it out, and it's doing what it needs to do. It's not super crazy, but look, the first time I got a deposit of $83, I was like, hey, know what I'm saying?
It's something. Something is better than nothing.
Exactly. And I think now it's just, we're talking about doing a listening party tour, what I'm saying, later this year, and just really giving people an experience that they haven't really had. Just like you did when you came to the premiere. And now we kind of wanted to add, what I'm saying, some things. Obviously, we probably won't do the whole thing like you got to experience, but, just teaching people more and more, about this space. And it's been good, man. It's been a really, really good fun time, I'm doing it now. We have more things coming, you know what I mean? I got a couple of series that we're, looking at putting out with a couple of different writers that have said, hey, you did this, with yours, man, would you produce this with me? And, there's some things that I pursued. I was like, hey, you remember that script that you did, da da da. Let me help and produce. So that's kind of been, not kind of, but that's been what I've been doing, just kind of outside of being the musician, and the show and doing the show, has really been focusing on that audio space, that audio production space, man. In that. And so I already called you that, hey, I'm gonna need you to come through, do some mixing and what I mean and stuff. So yeah, man, I'm really excited. I'm excited to take that and bring the audio production space to people who don't really know, a lot about it. And I won't say, I could say, pioneer in that space, or just be, in that 1 to 3%.
Yeah, no,
that are doing it, because
you're definitely pioneering, because there's no really, I haven't seen anybody do anything like what you did. Like, you talked about the old school, like focus on the family stuff, but what you're doing is you're taking that genre and making it palatable for today's generation. And so just sitting there listening, like, I was fully immersed. Like, I was there. The picture, I could see it in my mind's eye, just by hearing the dialogue. The music was incredible, and the story was amazing. Man, I just commend you for stepping out and just doing something different. That alone is just super commendable. And I just know from here on, the doors are going to be opening. Your creative juices are already flowing. People are going to come to you for pitching their stuff. So it's already happening. You just talked about it. But yeah, man.
It was nerve-wracking, man. It was because we can get stuck. You know what I mean? In a place, and doing something different. I was just like, man, but I knew that I wanted to do an audiobook musical because I hadn't seen it, that outside of like a Broadway cast recording or, something like that. I was like, specifically, and it being specifically for audio, that was a big thing too. Right now it's not on Audible because Audible won't let you do only audio unless you have like a deal with them or whatever the case may be. So we had to release it on the other sites, except except the 42 other sites. And I was just like, I'm not doing a hard copy. You know what I'm saying? This is specifically for this space. And we didn't know what they were going to be able to do. We didn't know if they were going to accept it. You know what I mean? And the way it was very nerve-wracking, but I was just like, nah, man, God knows. And he really just kind of put that desire in my heart to make it happen. And like I said, I'm so grateful, to you and El Boogie, you know what I mean, to come through and be there, because like I said, this was a first. This was a first. I had never done anything like that before, obviously putting it all together and editing the dialogue myself, and you know what I mean, all of that, all of those things, man, was
sometimes you got to do all of it.
Yes.
So you didn't know how to direct other people how to do it.
Yeah, and I just wanted to make it that. I wanted that experience to be amazing for the listeners, and and people that will be a part of it, too. And so I thank you so much for coming. Thank you for being there, and like you said, not knowing what this was, but just saying, hey, little bro is doing something. We gonna see. We gonna figure it out. And you did, and I appreciate the feedback, man, for sure.
Thank you for your offering. It was amazing. Like I said, man, just great job. And man, tell people where they could find it, and tell people where they can connect you on social media.
Okay, so you can connect with me on social media, Bruce Briggz, BruceBriggz, on everything. You know, your IGs, your Facebooks, your YouTube, all that stuff. And When He Looked at Me is on all audiobook platforms except Audible. But it's on all audiobook platforms. So your Apple Books, Spotify, through their audiobook side. Where else? In Tune, Google Play, Amazon. It's on all of those places. It is not Apple Music. Right. It is not Spotify Music. It's not Amazon Music. It's not on those DSPs. It is on audiobook sites. So that's what it is. Like I said, it's called When He Looked at Me. It is a audiobook musical. We tried to hold that as much as possible. But yeah, it's an audiobook musical. It's one of the first of its kind. And I would really, really love for you to go check it out. One, because we want to do more. But two, I got to buy diapers for my daughter. So I need y'all to go ahead and support.
Yes, y'all, please.
And
please support Bruce. You're going to be blessed by this offering. This project is so good. And connect with Bruce on social media. And if you're out in Vegas, go check out Mad Apple. I'm sure.
Yes. Yeah. Mad Apple, New York Hotel and Casino. We are there.
Very nice. Bruce, man, I appreciate you, man, for taking some time to spend me here in the studio.
Absolutely.
Continue, man, on everything that you got going on. And I'm just praying that, man, the sky's the limit for you. Looking forward to all the new projects you got coming out.
Thank
you.
Blessings
to your family. And for everybody, y'all, this episode has been so great, so informative. Got to learn about Bruce's life and music and everything he got going on. If you like this content, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to this channel.
Yes.
Check us out on all the audio podcast stores that you can find us on. And I'm just happy to be able to bring you guys great content here in the studio with me, Darius Fentress. And until next time, y'all, peace.